price is what you pay and value is what you get. These are the famous words of the legendary investor Warren Buffett. Now in today's video, I actually want to give you more of a deep dive into how to value stocks, because it's very easy to open up your broker, see a particular company you like, see the stock price, and then either buy or sell. But the question is it a fair price or not? And it's very difficult sometimes to judge. When you want to buy a car or an apartment, it's a bit more easy because you can compare across different cars or apartments and see how the price is there. But in stocks, you invest to a specific company, and it's a little bit more tricky. So that's why today I want to deep dive into this a little bit more and give you some thoughts and ideas on how you can evaluate and find a right price for a company. And for that, I'm actually going to be going through an amazing newsletter I recently signed up to. It's called How They Make Money. It's free of charge. They do have a paid version as well, but honestly, I really recommend you to sign up. I mean, that's not a referral link or anything, but honestly, it's a great newsletter. If you're interested into investing, they regularly go through different companies and evaluate where the revenues come from, their profitability, etc. So some really good insights. I actually wrote an amazing article on this topic. So yeah, I'm going to base myself on their newsletter and share some of my thoughts on that. So let's kick things off with the question of what drives the valuation, right? Essentially, the future price where we hope the stock might be going towards. And often when people value companies, especially on YouTube, etc., you see people talking about intrinsic value. What's the real worth of a company? And that's a big word because, it's really hard to evaluate, right? It's the same with valuating Bitcoin or some art pieces, right? For different people, it has different worth. A bottle of water might be worth €1 for you. However, if you happen to find yourself in a random desert somewhere in the world with nothing around you and you didn't drink anything for a day or more, honestly, you'd probably pay €100, if not more, for the bottle of water. So everything is relative, and that's why, value is very hard to judge. So hopefully going through that model, you have a better understanding of how you can find your own valuation of a company. And I really like the quote they're saying here, we're buying windshields, not rear view mirrors, right? We're looking for the future valuation. Yes, of course, the past helps us to evaluate. We look at that historic performance. That's very important because the past often, is a predictor for the future, but not necessarily. It depends also on what stage in the company growth they are in, right? But really, when we evaluate companies, we want to look to the future because that's obviously where the price ideally should be going. So when we evaluate, we look at the past data, definitely, but still, of course, we want to look at the innovation, growth prospect for the future of the particular company. And that's also a very true point. The buyers and sellers setting the stock market, right? The stock market is nothing else than the marketplace. Some people want to buy a stock, some people want to sell a stock. That's basically where demand and supply meets. And then obviously the price is determined accordingly. That's basically the essence of a stock market. And in that, obviously, prices can go up, prices can go down, but ultimately in the long run, the value of the company follows the earning power, right? If you don't generate revenue growth and hopefully also profitability, then obviously the market value will struggle to continually go up in the future. So that's one big thing we need to look at. When we talk about companies, we say things like Apple is the most valuable company in the world. But what does it all mean, right? Basically, it goes back to the market cap, the market capitalization. And market capitalization is very simply calculated. Basically, is the stock price, whatever the stock is trading in the current day, times the outstanding shares. So basically the shares in circulation. So those two multiplied basically give the total market value of the company any particular moment. And that obviously swings, right? Sometimes you read Elon Musk is the richest man in the world because basically what it means is that the stock price for Tesla is up at the moment. He has a lot of shares of that. So technically his market value and his own personal fortune shoots up in a particular day. But if the stock price drops, it also goes down. That's just an indication of how much a company is worth at any given moment. So when you do these calculations, you can quickly come up with some of the most valuable companies in the US. For example, here, of course, we do know that Apple still continues to be the most valuable company in the world, not just the US. But then we have Microsoft in the mix, Alphabet, Amazon, Nvidia. So yeah, these are some of the most valuable companies, obviously. And that's just derived from the stock price times the outstanding shares. And obviously these companies also make up the majority of the weighting in the S&P 500, the 500 biggest companies in the US. So if you invest in the S&P 500, most likely you're going to have most of those companies in your portfolio as well. Right, so next up we're talking about valuation tools. So these are tools and indicators that we use to evaluate a stock and see, are they on the right growth trajectory? Are they priced well? So these are some of the metrics and measures that people most commonly look at. And some of them include the price to book ratio, the PB ratio. And I don't want to go into too much detail of what each of them means, but these are some of the most commonly used metrics that people refer to when they value a stock. Then the price to earnings, PE ratio. Another one very commonly referred to is the earnings per share, EPS ratio. Discounted cash flow analysis is another point that people look at, which kind of takes into consideration future cash flow. So obviously none of those measures is perfect. They all have their pros and cons. You need to find what works for you, but don't only rely on one, because some of the people, they only look at the PE ratio, the EPS ratio, the discounted cash flow model. And while that's good, it gives you one indication. It's like you going to a doctor, you don't feel good, he only takes a temperature is okay, and says you're healthy, even though you still have pain, right? You might want to do other checks or take other measures of your body, so to say. And the same is true when you want to evaluate a huge company. Imagine evaluating a company like Apple, just relying on one single measure is obviously not enough. So you want to look at a number of them and make sure all of them are pointing towards the right direction. And even in the case one is off and all others are supporting your thesis, maybe investigate why that measure is there, because a lot of those figures we looked at can also easily be manipulated by a company. They're not perfect measures by any means, so be very mindful, use them as an indication, but don't only rely on those. Now, another very important part is to categorize the business, in which growth stage they currently are. And that's very important to keep in mind, because as you can see over here, obviously companies going through different growth stages. When you have a startup, like we had, for example, OpenAI, obviously, in the beginning, they may not be profitable, right? They're going to invest a lot of their money into R&D to grow the business, grow the revenues, into research and development, etc. So obviously, it's different to evaluate than if you have a mature company like Visa in this case, right? They're going to start paying a dividend. Young companies, in the beginning, when they're into growth, hyper-growth, self-funding, etc., they're not going to pay a dividend. Later on, they will. So just because a company doesn't pay a dividend doesn't mean it's not a good company. And you can still invest in them, hoping that one day, once they reach maturity, they might pay a dividend if that's important for you. The same with profitability. I'm an investor who wants to invest into companies that actually produce a profit, because I think only companies with profit are truly sustainable for the long term. So when I see some of the startup and hyper-growth companies without having profit, for me, it's a little bit difficult to invest. But if you're a bit more risky investor, you might feel much more comfortable and pay a premium into those companies. For example, all these AI companies now starting up that are at the beginning of the growth phase and obviously have a higher valuation potentially, but at the same time also potentially higher upside once they're moving towards maturity. So again, it's something to evaluate and keep in mind that some of those measures we've seen before, you have to also understand on what cycle of their growth phase they're in. Coming back to the point I mentioned at the beginning, how do we evaluate anything really depends on each person. It's a very subjective call, right? As we say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. The same is true for value, because value is in the eye of the investor. How I value things is very much different from you and very much different from Warren Buffett and other investors. And that's a great example over here. We have different types of investors. I mean, Warren Buffett, he's considered a legendary investor and he's very much a value investor, right? These are some of the models he's looking for. At the same time, Katie Wood with the ARK Invest, also very much out there in the public. She's very much growth-driven investor. She has long shot bets. She invests in some of the hottest startups where I will definitely stay away from. She doubles down on them. Any crisis, she puts even more money in. The stock goes down. Now, in the past, she hasn't done too well. Only future will tell. But once again, obviously a highly successful individual that people trust their money with. All the people you see here, they're very famous investors, obviously, that people trust their money with. So all of them have very much different approach. The same, for example, over here, Michael Burry, right? He's very much a contrarian investor. He really benefited from the housing bubble back in 2008, 2009. He saw it coming. He doubled down on it. He shorted the market and made huge money from it. So again, high risk, high reward. So there's so many different investing styles. And that's when people ask me, Kai, what stock should I invest in? Or should I buy Bitcoin? Should I buy ETFs? Should I buy stocks? Should I buy real estate? It's really hard to say, because you have to find your own investment style, and really it differs completely to your own risk versus reward profile. So it's good to see this, to keep in mind, try out different things, right? I did it myself. At some stage, I bought a lot of crazy crypto coins. Other times, I had some meme coins as well. Then I went into tech stocks. Now I'm very much into dividend growth stock investing. So you really have to try out different things to find your own way of investing. There is no right or wrong. All of them have made great returns over time. So you have to find what works for you. And then obviously you will also look for different things, right? As a dividend growth investor, I look at companies more towards the end of the growth cycle where they have really established track record, etc. If you're a more risky investor, you're going to look at companies more in their startup phase, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. One great thing I always like to look at is a comparative analysis, where you look at peers in the industry, right? Because it's hard to compare Tesla to Nvidia or to Amazon. They're in completely different industries and do different things. But if I compare Tesla to other EV manufacturers, then I get an idea, okay, how much are they worth? What is their price? What are their ratios, their profitability, etc.? And I get a better idea of how well Tesla is doing or how bad they're doing versus the competitors. And that's really gives you a better understanding. The same as I said in the beginning, when I look at real estate in a particular area, I go on a real estate page and look up apartments around the apartment I want to buy. And if they're priced at half the price, then obviously I need to understand why it's at such a premium. There might be a reason, but if not, then I know I'm going to be overpaying for that. The same is true with stocks. So that really always helps go on some websites, on Seeking Alpha, for example, very easily. You go over here. Let's say in this case, I have Tesla. I click over here on peers, and then boom, I see most of their direct competitors over there, and I can see, what are the different measures, how they're doing compared to them. So that gives me a good idea. I can also add some if I wanted some other ones, etc. But just to keep an idea of how they are doing relative to their peers. Another important point to look at is what they call premium on optionality, or better said, the asymmetric upside. So you want to have a high upside while having a lower protected downside, obviously. In simple words, it means what is the history of innovation the company has, how many innovative ideas they came up with and actually implemented. And the same is the moat. A moat basically is a very strong protection of any given company for other competitors to enter into their market and take some of their market share away. For example, the Apple ecosystem is one of the best examples. They have such a strong moat. Once people are technically trapped in the Apple ecosystem, like myself, it's very hard to leave. I will not overnight go to Android because I'm so invested into that ecosystem. It's really impossible for me to migrate everything to another operating system. So that's a moat, what I mean. The same with Visa and MasterCard. Those two providers are literally running the payment card industry. It's very hard for a new entrant to that market to take over share. So for example, the same with Google or Alphabet. When you look at it, obviously in terms of search, yes, Microsoft is coming now with Bing, etc. to invest into AI and improve the search. But still, Google advertising through Google search is still very much running the industry. When we look into innovation, you can see over here, Amazon, they're having so many different parts of their business. They don't just deliver packages, but for example, the AWS, the cloud-based business, is growing more and more in importance to them. So they have so many different revenue streams coming into them. And for me, that's really reassuring because even if one of them goes down, they have other legs to stand on. Look at the innovation and the moat. How unique are they and how easy or ideally difficult it is for other market entrants to take over some of the market share. And of course, few more factors influencing valuations, things like management quality, right? A lot of people invest or don't invest based on the management. You might say, well, that CEO is a really great person. I love him, great. And other people may not invest because of the CEO and they say, wow, that's such a poor leader. And yes, I definitely get that thinking. But at the same time, it really depends, once again, what kind of investor you are. If you're a dividend growth investor, you're going to be investing for 20, 30, 40 years. And most likely, the CEO won't be there by that time anymore. But of course, it's something to keep in mind with the current management. But look beyond that also. Don't just focus on the current CEO because CEOs come and go. It's the long-term trajectory of the company. I think it's more important than just one individual person of a company. I mean, look at Apple once again. Once Steve Jobs left, everybody thought, oh my God, that's it with Apple. Well, then Tim Cook came, and honestly, he did such an amazing job to even further grow the company. So I think don't just over-rely on that. Of course, we should also look at the overall economic environment, right? GDP growth, inflation, because that depends on industry to industry. If the inflation goes up, borrowing gets more expensive, people are less likely to afford real estate, so maybe investing into REIT in the current times is a bit more challenging. So look at the overall macroeconomic factors as well. And of course, overall market trends, right? With all this ESG investing, for example, people are really pushing more and more into sustainability, green things, etc. So if that's something you keep in mind, that's an overall market trend that's very much pushed by global politicians, World Economic Forum, BlackRock, etc. So if you recognize that, maybe that's something you want to leisure on and capitalize on that trend rather than going against it. And that's probably companies that are going to be struggling in the future if they're not ESG friendly. So these things are also something to keep in mind. Of course, it's a little bit risky at the same time because trends come and go, right? But if it's a long-term trend that you really start seeing, people living a more healthy life, great. Let's understand that and invest into that. Investing into car companies that are not transitioning to EV probably wouldn't be the smartest move given the current times. So as you can see, there's no right or wrong the way you evaluate the company. You have to find your own way. Of course, make sure to use certain models, certain KPIs and measures that have been proven over time to help you evaluate the company. But in the end, it comes down to your preferences as an investor. And personally, I really struggle with the idea of intrinsic value that the company is worth, because who is to say what the company is worth? It is worth what people are paying for. The same with real estate, right? Imagine you saved up all your life and you finally want to buy your own apartment in the city you love, in the area you love, and the apartment in the neighborhood goes for around €500,000. Now, that may be too expensive because based on your research, it should be worth only €300,000, right? And you look around, but all of the apartments are worth €500,000. So you could sit there and say, well, it's overpriced. I'm not going to pay for that. I wait until it comes down. But that might never happen because in the end, again, the price is what people are paying for it. So if everybody else around you thinks it's worth $500,000, they will pay the price for it and it will potentially only go up even higher and you will never get to own that piece of real estate. And the same is true with stocks, right? So when I see people doing their own magical calculations, don't get me wrong, I think it can be a good exercise to do, but that just might be your personal opinion of what the price is. If everybody else thinks it's worth more, well then they're all going to pay the premium for it and you might never end up owning the stock. So that's just something to keep in mind. I hope you found this video useful. Definitely check out the newsletter. And if you sign up to theirs, you can also sign up to my newsletter, which I send out on a weekly basis. And if you do sign up for it, I'm actually also going to send you a free gift, which is my monthly budget and net worth tracker. Next up, check out this video over here. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy, get wealthy, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.